Hello, everybody. You know what? I'm not even going through the hellos. I'm just diving into it. Here is our Congress. Here is a member of our Congress running from people asking him about the genocide he supports like he's on fire, like it's gremlins chasing him.
Can tell the Palestinians I will never support
Palestinian myself.
Why do you support the genocide and all of the war crimes and collective punishment? Are you concerned about all the children?
Let me make
dying
it
in
clear.
Gaza?
Let me make it clear. Israel is our ally, will always be our ally.
Even if they commit war
And they are
crimes,
not
even
guilty
with
of genocide,
Say
and I
why?
will support Israel forever.
you will
So Israel will stay your ally even though they commit
Israel will be
genocide.
my
Even with
That's
that.
your term.
Even
Can
when
you
they kill
That is
explain-
your
even when
term.
they kill 30,000
What
kids.
they
That is
did
a
to the
statistic.
Israeli
That's a
people
statistic.
on October. Let me tell you a statistic.
Yeah, please.
Israel will exist. The Jewish state will exist.
That's not a
It will always
statistic.
exist.
That's not what we're.
That's not a statistic. Also, he looks like, does he not look like, I've never watched this guy before. Representative Fleischman, is it? He looks like a kid like playing in his dad's suit. Like, I'm like, it's really remarkable. This is the people that supposedly run the country. We know they don't really run the country, but still, this is the people that we're supposed to believe run the country. Lunatics like this guy.
And that is for
That
God
has absolutely
to do
nothing
and
to do with what
decide.
we're saying.
And I will
You are a
always support
supporter of
Israel.
genocide, sir. You're
I will
supporting
always
the
support
murder of
Israel,
little children.
and you can tell the Palestinians I will
I
never
am a
support them.
Palestinian myself.
Also, I will always support Israel is one of the dumbest comments you could ever make. Really, there is no limit. So if they just dropped nuclear bombs on Gaza, that'd be fine. If they shot nuclear bombs at the U.S., you'd still support Israel? Really? Just always, just blanket statement, always, no matter what. I don't care if they're doing Caligula torture experiments. Just always support. Really, that sounds like the least moral statement you could ever make. But of course, these people are not moral. They're mass war criminals, and many of them endorse this genocide or supporting this genocide. And when they're confronted with it, when they're faced with it, they've got nothing. This guy's just running for the hills.
Then I will tell you, I will never support you.
Yeah?
I will tell you to your
And
face.
you want my you want my cousins
Goodbye
to
to
die.
Palestine. Goodbye
I will
to
support
Palestine.
So if you didn't catch that, he just yelled, and it wasn't like a trip up, like goodbye, the Palestine. Legit said, I'll tell you to your face, goodbye, Palestine. This guy legitimately wants to wipe away Palestine, wants to get rid of Palestinians. Like, he just gave a full-throated endorsement, as opposed to kind of the squirrely stuff that people like Biden and Bernie Sanders and stuff are doing. This guy, full-throated endorsement for genocide, for ethnic cleansing, goodbye, Palestine. I mean, that's who's in our Congress right now.
Israel.
Palestine?
Goodbye
You
to
want to watch
Palestine.
Palestine?
We will support Israel forever.
So
No.
you are
I will
comfortable.
So
always
just
support Israel.
FYI, this guy just said goodbye
Always
to
support
Palestine.
Yes.
Israel.
Okay.
So you just said goodbye to Palestine. So you are
Goodbye.
saying you are comfortable with the murder of thousands of children.
The Jewish people will never
You are
suffer
not
again
answering the
under
question.
Palestinian terrorism, under Hamas, under Hezbollah.
What about
Israel will be secure
30,000
forever.
innocent
Okay.
God bless
civilians?
Israel forever.
Thank
So
you
you
for
want to wipe Palestine off the earth? Yeah.
God
Yes?
bless
Yeah.
Israel forever.
I mean, it's just unbelievable. But at least he's speaking it straight. At least he's saying all this genocidal, racist garbage straight, as opposed to what we're getting out of so much of the administration and Congress, which is mealy mouth shit, where they act like, oh, well, I would support a ceasefire. Yeah, really. Well, you would support a ceasefire while you send arms, tens of thousands of bombs to be dropped on children, but you would support a ceasefire. This guy is just straight up goodbye Palestine. I'm endorsing ethnic cleansing. I'm all for it. Let's do it. I mean, this is the type of garbage that's coming out of our Congress. And, you know, thank you to the protesters with Code Pink. Code Pink has just been knocking it out of the park the last few months, just getting in the faces of all these Congress people, making them at least tell the truth to the camera. If you're going to be this genocidal, if you're going to be this much of a war criminal, at least be honest. And then one day, like with the Nazis, one day, if there is a trial where you actually are put on trial for endorsing war crimes, luckily we'll have video of you saying things like goodbye Palestine. Anyway, I wanted to bring you that video up top. But I have so much more coming for you this hour. Later in the hour, I'm going to destroy Jordan Peterson and his garbage. Oh man, I got a clip for you. His garbage defending Israel, defending this genocide. I'm going to bring you that. I'm going to bring you so much more news and information that you generally won't get on the mainstream media, or at minimum, you won't get the deeper analysis on the mainstream media. So please click thumbs up, click share, click subscribe, click the bell icon, and show up and join these 4 days a week. If anyone does a super chat, I will try and address those as soon after you do them as possible. Now I want to bring you a video of Netanyahu essentially defining himself as a terrorist. Netanyahu defining himself as a terrorist. But as a lead up to that, let's go through today's numbers, or actually this is as of 2 days ago. So the number killed by Israel in Gaza is 39,178. Now, the reason you don't hear the number 39,000 coming from media or even many independent outlets is because they're not including the people that are lost under the rubble that are almost definitely dead. So the number is much higher than we're hearing. You generally hear 30,000, but it is 39,000 if you count those missing under the rubble. Injured, 73,000. Journalists killed, 132. Just to remind you, that is more journalists killed than the entirety of Vietnam, more journalists killed than the entirety of World War II, because Israel is targeting journalists, whereas in Vietnam, in World War II, there was very little targeting of journalists. Many journalists would get killed in fighting, but there was very little targeting, aiming for journalists, whereas Israel is clearly aiming and trying to kill journalists. Displaced, over 2 million. Completely destroyed homes, 106,000. Partially destroyed, 250,000. Press headquarters damaged, 175. Again, that's because Israel is aiming for press outlets. Damaged schools, 430. Destroyed industrial facilities, 2,000. Healthcare professionals, 756 have been killed. And that also is because Israel is aiming for healthcare professionals, hoping to destroy the hospital and health systems across Gaza. Heritage sites. These are sites that have lasted for thousands of years, and 200 have been demolished or mostly demolished since the beginning of this, 150, whatever it is, 153 days ago. And think about that. Through all of the skirmishes, through all of the fights that this area of the world has seen over thousands of years, these places lasted. And yet Israel has bombed them and destroyed them in 150 days. But let's hear from Netanyahu, because here he is several decades ago. I don't have the exact year, but defining, it seems, himself as a terrorist.
What terrorists do is target the innocent deliberately. And therefore, my definition of terrorism is the systematic and deliberate attack, the murder, maiming, and menacing of innocents.
The murder, maiming, and killing of innocent people. That's how he defines a terrorist, which makes him, by definition, a terrorist.
For political goals. You can tell a lot about terrorists, but what happens when they come to power? Those who fight for freedom and come to power do not impose terrorism.
So what happens when a terrorist comes to power? They impose terrorism. Oh, that's interesting. What happened when Netanyahu came to power? He imposed terrorism.
Those who fight in terroristic means, end up as being masters of terrorist states. Terrorists do.
There it is, folks. Netanyahu defining himself as a terrorist. This is from several decades ago. And he really is a terrorist. Israel now being led by a far-right cabal, a far-right terrorist regime that wants to wipe all Palestinians off the map. In fact, I believe it was 16 days to be exact. I read, but I did see the speech. 16 days before October 7th, Netanyahu held up a map where Palestine was wiped off the map. So that's how open he was with it. It's not even a secret anymore. It hasn't been for many years that this far-right the messianic cabal of leaders in Israel want to wipe all Palestinians off the map. Now, there are many Israelis who also endorse this genocide, so I don't want to act like it's just these far-right messianic leaders, but they're obviously the ones making the decisions. And, just to remind everyone, this has even been said by former Prime Minister of Israel, Ehud Olmert, who wrote in Haaretz about how this far-right messianic cabal of narcissists are involved in ethnic cleansing, want to wipe Palestine off the map. So even former Israeli prime ministers are saying this. Not really a secret anymore. And again, for those of you who are new to the show and just joining it, I am Jewish. But guess what? You can be Jewish and still be opposed to genocide. That's how that works. So another big announcement. Victoria Nuland, coup master in chief. Victoria Nuland, who has helped the United States through so many wonderful coups, through destroying so many lives. I mean, I wonder if the thousands and thousands and thousands of people that Victoria Nuland has helped kill over the years, I wonder if they're kind of looking down on her and applauding as she resigns, cheering her as she walks off into resignation. But Victoria Nuland, who was very involved, most famously in the coup in Ukraine, has resigned. She was involved. She advised the United States and was involved in multiple coups. But the one she was most hands-on with was the proxy war in Ukraine, the coup in 2014 in Ukraine, taking out a Russian favorable leader and putting in a U.S.-backed puppet. And Ermate points out here that her replacement as Deputy Secretary of State is John Bass, a former ambassador to Afghanistan who oversaw the U.S. withdrawal from the country. Like Nuland, he's also a former aide to Dick Cheney. Really inspires confidence. But some people are pointing out that perhaps this means a U.S. withdrawal is coming in Ukraine, but I don't know if I'd put so much weight on that. I mean, let's remember that the withdrawal from Afghanistan was catastrophic in many regards, so it's not like it went smoothly. But anyway, either way, I don't know if we should read a lot into the fact that the person replacing her has been in charge of U.S. withdrawals in the past. But he's also been in charge or pivotal in so many of the U.S.'s war crimes over the years. As Aaron mentioned, a former aide to Dick Cheney. I don't know if you can think of any war crimes or anything Dick Cheney has been involved in. I can't think. Dick Cheney, he was vice president, right? I think he mainly just got coffee, right, for George Bush. I think didn't he pick out some of the furniture, like the upholstery. I don't know if he actually changed the furniture, but he had some of the chairs reupholstered. I think that was one of his decisions. But no, I don't think Dick Cheney was involved in anything large scale in terms of harming people around the world and destroying lives. He mainly sat in the back and just kind of watched. But to go back to Victoria Nuland for a moment, many of you may have heard this, but I just want to remind everybody of the phone call that was leaked that actually proved that she and other U.S. representatives were involved in actually picking the U.S. puppet president of Ukraine after the 2014 Maidan coup. This is like in the days after. This is like immediately. And I'm just going to play a little piece of it. But this is her on the phone. And when she says Yats is the guy, that's kind of the key sentence. Yats is Yatsenyuk, who ultimately became the president of Ukraine, the U.S. puppet in Ukraine. Eventually, you'd see Zelensky run for office and win the honor of being the U.S. puppet in Ukraine. But anyway, this is a leaked or hacked phone call that she and the U.S. never wanted out.
Yanukovych is calculating on all of this. I I think Yats is the guy who's got the economic experience, the governing experience. He's the guy, what he needs is Cleach and Tony Book on the outside. He needs to be talking to them 4 times a week. I just think Cleach going in, he's going to be at that level working for Yatsenyuk. It's just not going to work.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. Okay, good. Well, do you want us to try to set up a call with him?
Legitimately, they're selecting the next president of Ukraine after the U.S.-backed coup. Now, let me also remind everyone that the New York Times just the other day, this coup took place in 2014. This is when the U.S. really put this whole proxy war game into high gear. This is when they really were able to get their tentacles into Ukraine and force Russia's hand in myriad ways. But just the other day, and I covered it on this live stream, just the other day, the New York Times finally admitted in an extensive article that the CIA was heavily in Ukraine starting at minimum in 2014. Starting at minimum at the time of that coup. Now, it seems quite evident that CIA and MI6 were there before 2014, but at minimum, the New York Times has admitted that starting in 2014, you have CIA bases in the forests on the edge of Russia. In Ukraine, in the forest, on the edge of Russia. And in that article, the New York Times also admits that those CIA bases, it admits they were arming and training and funding Ukrainian forces in the forest on the border of Russia. It also admits that they were training guys, Ukrainian spies, etc., to go into Russia and perpetrate what have you. So in this New York Times article, which is, the liberal view of the world, they're admitting everything that we've been saying for years, that we said, it seems like Russia's invasion was somewhat provoked. It seems like the U.S. was in Ukraine. It seemed like NATO was expanding onto Russia's border. All these things that we were told, well, you're out of your goddamn mind. What are you talking about? What are you, a traitor? What are you, Putin propagandist? And now, after 2 years of the Ukraine proxy war, but again, going back many years before that, 2014 Maidan coup, after all these years, the New York Times is like, oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, that happened. So that's a thing. Oh, thanks. Yeah. Are we getting apologies? Or are we going to get a retraction of all the stories you've printed that acted like either directly or ostensibly that the U.S. wasn't there at all before 2022. The U.S. had nothing to do with it. Putin's just a loony bin who just decided to invade somewhere because, he was bored one day. He was throwing darts at a map and he said, let's invade Ukraine. So anyway, goodbye to Victoria Nuland, who has the blood of hundreds of thousands, if not millions, on her hands. And start scrubbing, Vicky. Start scrubbing the fingies. Because that's not going to come out easy. Ask George W. Bush. He paints a lot, and many of his paintings are of him in the bath of the shower because he's still trying to scrub the blood off, isn't he? Just ask that Freudian slip he had recently. I don't know if you can ask a Freudian slip something, but just look at that Freudian slip that he had recently where he said, invaded Iraq without any pretense or completely illegally, and then he goes, I mean Ukraine. Putin invaded Iraq without any... Nice slip up there, Georgie boy. Thank you so much, James, for the Super Chat donation. You guys make this show possible. I also want to say thank you before I get to another major leak that has come out of the U.S. government as well as Iran seizing this oil, $50 million of oil from the U.S. Before I get to that, real quick, I want to say your donations keep this show going. As you can see, I don't have sponsors and things, so it really is you guys. This show is yours. You support it and you make it possible. Thank you for the comments. Thank you for the discussion in the chat and all those things. If you also, so I appreciate the super chats a ton. I noticed that last week someone asked, and so I gave out my Venmo, and a lot of people prefer to donate that way. If that is the case, you can donate on Venmo at Lee Camp, just my name. And that donation will nothing is taken from it. So you can give the full amount to me in the show rather than giving it on another platform where a percentage is taken. Anyway, let's move on. And get to, boy, I just realized I got two big leaks. That I brought you the Vicky Newland leak, and now we're coming up on leaked cables here in a moment. But thank goodness there are still leaks in the days after WikiLeaks. I know WikiLeaks exists, but it has been heavily compromised. Julian Assange continues to be tortured in a Belmarsh prison. He could be shipped to the U.S. any day now. And actually, since I accidentally mentioned that, why don't I jump to this story first? This is from Stella Assange. I have had Stella Assange on the show, but she points out the difference between Google's AI and a new French AI called Mistral. I have never tried the French AI, but anyway, she writes the prompt. If you write into these AIs, if you write and describe the CIA plot against Julian Assange, here are the results. And for those of you who don't know, the CIA, it's been heavily reported. The CIA had planned under Donald Trump, under Mike Pompeo, to kidnap or kill Julian Assange. They actually had plans on how to assassinate Julian Assange. So that was the plot, the basics of it. Here's what happens if you type it into Google's AI, describe the CIA plot against Julian Assange. Google Gemini says, I can't find any evidence of a CIA plot against Julian Assange. There you go. Learning a lot from that AI. Here is the French Mistral. It says, the CIA plot against Julian Assange refers to a series of alleged activities. Like, it has all of the details. Number 1, surveillance. The CIA reportedly conducted extensive surveillance. Number 2, kidnapping or assassination plans. Number 3, undermining WikiLeaks. Number 4, pressuring Ecuador to give Julian Assange up, which they ultimately succeeded in. They ultimately got Ecuador under Moreno, I believe. Moreno. They ultimately got Ecuador to basically surrender Julian Assange and allow him to be tortured in Belmarsh by offering them over $4 billion of loans from the World Bank, which came to Ecuador just days after they allowed Julian Assange to be dragged out of their embassy so he could be tortured. Isn't it nice to see how those deals get made? Don't you like to see cooperation around the world? Like, that is two countries, Ecuador and the U.S., that have not really gotten along some of the time. And there they are just shaking big hands and hugging around. And it's just good to see them working together on something, working together on torturing the most famed and successful publisher journalist that perhaps has ever lived, but at minimum has lived in recent decades. All right, let's jump to, and thank you all for the support again. Thank you for the thumbs up. Thank you for hitting subscribe. Make sure you hit the bell icon, even though you often will not get the alerts that I'm starting the show. But anyway, let's get to this. Iranian seizure of U.S. oil, which out of this oil tanker, which the reason I felt this is not just another story is because this makes a major point about the waning power of the U.S. empire, which the right wing and many of the liberals will tell you, oh my God, what a bad thing. The U.S. empire is fading. This is a good thing for the world and humanity. The United States, and I'm going to say this slowly so everyone gets it, the United States should not rule the damn world. We have proven again and again we are not good rulers of the world. We just destroy and extract and harm billions, literally billions of people. So maybe let's let someone else give it a try just to see how just to see how it feels. Thank you so much, Alex, for the donation. I'll get to it in a minute. Anyway, Iran seizes U.S. cargo on oil tanker over sanctions. Iranian authorities have confiscated the American cargo of an oil tanker seized last year after U.S.-led sanctions prevented the entry of medication into the Islamic Republic. The judiciary said Wednesday the Marshall Islands flagged Advantage Suite that's the name of the ship, was seized in April 2023 while sailing in the Gulf of Oman, a key route for the oil industry. The vessel, chartered by a Chevron Corp. Well, Chevron's never done anything wrong. I don't know why they'd go after Chevron. Chevron, they're just good folks over there at Chevron. They're just good folks doing good things, like sending us all to extinction. But other than that, if you look past that one thing, they are nice fellas, okay? Once played around the golf with those fellas. Good guys. Had Chevron Corp, the vessel had picked up oil from Kuwait and was bound for Texas before it was seized. The cargo's value said to be worth $50 million. The oil seizure was in retaliation for the sanctions of Western countries, especially the United States, which led to the prevention of the sale of drugs that were needed by patients. Iran has been under crippling U.S. sanctions since Washington's 2018 withdrawal from a landmark nuclear deal. Iran has been under these horrific sanctions that cause people in Iran to be very poor, to die. I don't know if you've heard of dying. It's like one of the worst things you can do to people. And literally cutting off medication. And I know I repeat this a lot, but I think it bears repeating, but I also don't think it gets mentioned enough, even by independent media outlets. Sanctions, they're the U.S. just like, we don't like that empire because they're getting in the way of our petrodollar, et cetera. So we're going to try and harm them. But they don't harm the rich in that country. They don't harm the leaders, generally speaking. Maybe slightly, but not much. Maybe the person's got $5 million and then $2 million was overseas. And so it got grabbed up. So it could harm them a little, but not that much. But the sanctions actually really and immediately harm the poor, harm the children, harm the ill, harm the elderly, harm the weakest people in the society. So every time you hear of sanctions, they are always horrific. They are always designed to harm the poorest and weakest in the society. The ones who die from the sanctions first are usually babies, usually infants. That's who usually die the first from U.S. sanctions. Thank you, Magic9, for the donation, who said, yes, finally someone said it. And to get back to Alex's donation, Alex says, an inexpensive way to defund terror and gain independence would be wind, solar, nuclear, and hydropower. No? Wonder why GOP leaders don't realize this. Winks knowingly. Yeah, exactly. If we for the U.S. to get independence from foreign oil, you just switch to clean energy immediately. And yes, there are the ones like wind and solar and stuff, which, take a lot of work and a lot of effort. But there are also other efforts going on, such as nuclear fusion, which the U.S., there's been many advancements in nuclear fusion, which is different than the nuclear power we've seen already. But there's a reason the U.S. is not funding really the advancements in nuclear fusion. Nuclear fusion, I meant to do a segment on this, but I've never had the time really. But nuclear fusion, they are working on it. There are scientists working on it. And the amount of funding that is given to it, they basically gave 3 levels of funding. It was like nuclear fusion soon, nuclear fusion later, and nuclear fusion never. Basically, if you fund it at a trickle, then you will never get to nuclear fusion. Guess how much the United States is funding nuclear fusion? Nuclear fusion never is the area of funding the U.S. is giving it. And I heard an interview with these scientists who go, we don't understand why they're not funding us enough. Why won't they give us the funding? That's exactly how very intelligent scientists sound. They always sound like that. Why won't they give us the money? Please. Every time they sound like that. Anyway, the reason is because the U.S. knows that if nuclear fusion becomes prevalent and becomes the power of the world, then petrodollar done. It's as simple as that. And the U.S. power is based on the petrodollar. I'm sorry, but it is. So that is another reason that the U.S. defends fossil fuels again and again and again at every level and just needs as much oil to keep pumping as possible. And it's why our government that doesn't represent us at all pretends, though at least the Democrats pretend, not the Republicans, the Democrats pretend, oh, well, we're going to get to clean energy. And they do everything they can to make sure we don't really get to clean energy. It's all these little tiny piecemeal band-aids to try and look like they give a flying shit about the environment. But no, the U.S. needs oil pumping all the time to continue to be able to print all the money we want, to continue to fund our military to $1 trillion a year. And that's how it works. And it's amazing how you will never hear that analysis on your mainstream media. I wonder why that is. I can't figure it out. Magic9, thank you again for the donation, says, by it, meaning, yes, finally someone said it. By it, I was referring to the U.S. not being good at ruling the world. Thank you, Magic9. I appreciate that. And I like when people have to donate again to clarify. If you could give vague donation super chats and then have to donate again to clarify, that would really help. Anyway, moving on, leaked U.S. cable. Israeli invasion of Rafah would have catastrophic humanitarian consequences. And I know that as we go through this genocide, as this genocide is ongoing around the world, not around the world, but in Gaza, but as we see it, people witness it around the world. You may wonder, like, what's one city in Gaza versus another, Rafah versus Khan Yunis? Well, they're all horrific. But what's happened is Israel has bombed the shit out of most of Gaza. I've shown maps of it. It's just covering Gaza, tens of thousands. And more bombs have been dropped tonnage-wise on Gaza than like 3 or 4 Hiroshima nuclear bombs. Basically, Israel has nuked Gaza without using nukes. And it has caused all the Palestinians, all the Gazans, almost all of them, to flee to Rafah, which is the last city that has not just been carpet bombed. And so you now have close to 2 million people, 1.5 million trapped or more. It's increasing every day, trapped in Rafah. And that's because they're all fleeing everything else. So now if Israel were to attack Rafah, you're attacking, and I don't mean Nadal. He is a great tennis player, but I don't think Israel should go after him. I think that would be very upsetting. Anyway, if Israel were to now attack, they'd basically be trying to kill all of the remaining Palestinians that they haven't already killed. As I brought you at the beginning of this live stream, it is 39,000 Gazans have been murdered by Israel over 153 days, if you count the people lost in the rubble. Anyway, this is from The Intercept. A diplomatic cable sent Monday from the U.S. Embassy in Israel offers an unusual, candid assessment of the humanitarian situation. The cable, written by officials with the Bureau for Humanitarian Assistance at the U.S. Agency of International Development, USAID. Oh, great, USAID. I love them. Warns about the potential effects of an all-out Israeli ground invasion of Rafah, where about 1.5 million Palestinians have been driven. The quote from the leaked memo is a potential escalation of military operations in southern Gaza's Rafah governorate could result in catastrophic humanitarian consequences, including mass civilian casualties, extensive population displacement, and the collapse of the existing humanitarian response. I didn't know there was one. Multiple relief actors have warned USAID's team there. And you may wonder why USAID, which is essentially a CIA cutout, it's useful to the United States to create color revolutions around the world. You may wonder why anyone at USAID would care about anyone when they're actually just their job is to help create coups around the world. Well, it's because you do have thousands of people who work for these organizations who don't necessarily understand the entire implications or the entire motivations of the U.S. empire. There are many people, in fact, maybe most, who really don't get it. I'm not saying they're not smart. You can be smart as heck and not get it, okay? You can be very smart and not get it. In fact, most of the people who rule the world are very smart and don't get it. No, actually they do. The ones who rule the world get, but most of the other people, the leaders in many countries and in many places, who don't get the full level of just how much the U.S. empire is destroying and extracting from the world and how exactly they do it. And so I don't doubt that there are thousands of USAID employees who have bought the propaganda that the U.S. empire is trying to do good mostly. And they worked, and I'm talking lower level people, not the people calling the shots. And so there are plenty of people who work at these places that think they're doing good for the world. And that's why you have, and I brought you this when it happened, Samantha Powers, who's the head of USAID, she obviously gets it. She's being called out in public. There were people during her speech who work at her organization, USAID, demanding she call it a genocide. And why isn't she demanding a ceasefire? And again, why would they work at USAID if they don't? Because they didn't understand, apparently, that that's the goal of the U.S. empire, is to do these type of horrific actions or to support Israel throughout these type of horrific actions. Anyway, that is information coming from USAID that the invasion of Rafah, the attack on Rafah, would be catastrophic for the tennis world. I mean, he is one of the greats. He's won 22 Grand Slams. I don't know if you guys knew that. Okay, but you just to pick you back up. See, whenever I bring to you something horrific like that, I like to pick you back up by showing you protesters getting in the face of our sleazeball politicians and who are now genocidal politicians. Let's talk about Adam Schiff, one of the leaders of the Democrats, who is perfectly fine with this genocide. He was the face of Russiagate that was completely debunked for years and years. Anyway, he just won his. Was it actually his victory speech, I guess, or was it his primary victory speech? I don't know. It was a victory. So I guess it was, because his election would be the same time as Biden, so November. So I guess he's announcing his primary victory speech. Anyway. You might not be able to tell it, so I'll just explain. The people you're hearing screaming are not cheering for him. They're yelling, ceasefire now. So he's interrupted at his own victory speech, and basically to the level that he can't continue, really, because it's so loud. It ultimately ends in a near fist fight over these protesters. But I can never get enough of people getting in the faces of these monsters. Just monsters. And then all the loony liberals who are fine with this genocide start chanting, Adam, Adam, Adam. And he just has to keep standing there because it's so loud that he can't just keep talking about what a fun thing this was that we did. We won our primary. All right, well, you can't see it with all the dumb promo clips. But anyway, it turns into a near fist fight because the pathetic, shitty liberals have to try and defend their candidate, their wonderful candidate who represents them. Doesn't he just represent them? Isn't he just wanted to, the whole reason he's in Congress is to serve, folks. He's there to serve you and me and really do what we want. And that's why he made up that bullshit about Russiagate for 4 straight years and continues to act like it's legitimate, even though it's all been completely debunked and collapsed and everything else. And, you know, here's something else that you don't hear enough from maybe independent outlets is, guess what? 4 years of the Russiagate garbage that all collapsed, even though I despise Donald Trump, he's a racist, misogynist, messianic lunatic who's been bankrupt more than you can count. But even though I despise him, making up that garbage to attack him, it just made him stronger. Because if you are going to bring just a tsunami of lies to try and bring someone down, well, guess what? As they're all proven to be lies, it just makes him stronger. It actually proves he was right the entire time. Because the entire time he was saying, Russiagate's ridiculous, it's lies, it's all fake, it's all lies. And what do you know? You proved him right. So for those liberals out there who hate Donald Trump and just want to do anything to get rid of Donald Trump, and you think Joe Biden's a good guy as he commits genocide around the world, he's committing genocide in Gaza, but as he destroys the world, as he's doing all that, even if you want to harm Donald Trump, that's not the way to do it. To make up lies about the Russiagate scandal that was completely debunked. That just makes him strong. You're feeding him. You're feeding the monster. Don't you understand that? But no, of course they don't. Of course they don't. But since I brought you a little clip about the monsters in the Democratic side, I'm going to bring you a clip about the monsters on the other side. Tom Cotton, a Republican, has introduced a bill to make protesting Israel illegal. Well, hold on. Before I bring you that, let me highlight TNT. Thank you for the donation. I support your work, Lee. Keep rocking and speaking truth to power. Many are still deep asleep here in the U.S. Thank you so much, TNT. You guys make this show possible. You keep it going. And if you all don't want to do this, for anyone who would prefer to donate on Venmo instead of Super Chat, you can do that at Lee Camp on Venmo. Someone's asking what Marianne Williamson's position is on Gaza. I haven't heard her speak on Gaza. I don't know. I try not to listen to her as much as I'm just kidding. I don't like try not to listen to her. I just think she's kind of meaningless. But I know that she's terrible on like Afghanistan. She said the U.S. should stay in Afghanistan to help the women. She bought into that liberal garbage. So she buys into so much of the liberal just trash that I'm like, that's not useful. Like, if you want to be anti-war, be anti-war. Be fully anti-war. Be fully against U.S. empire. And she's just not. I mean, at times, I'm not saying she's never good. At times, she's good. But if you're going to endorse U.S. empire or the U.S. war machine on certain things here and there, then you lost me. Like, let's just keep it. It's only been 20 years invading Afghanistan. Let's just do it for just a bit more, just a little bit more, and just see how it goes. Maybe the 21st year is the year where it just all gets smoothed out, right? Maybe that's the year the U.S. military, blood-soaked, just killing machine, just finally gets it right for the people of Afghanistan. Like, if you can't understand that, then you can't understand anything. Then you've just missed it all. I mean, that's my view. Sorry if that annoys people. By the way, I'm about to get to, in a couple of minutes, I'm about to get to destroying Jordan Peterson. Oh, that sack of human. Not going to say it. Be good for the kids, Lee. Be good for the kids. Here's Breitbart, which apparently still exists. I was unaware that this complete trash rag still existed. Exclusive. Senator Tom Cotton unveils bill. How could it be an exclusive if he's unveiling a bill? They just learned that people click on things that say exclusive. Exclusive. Bill passes Congress. No, that's not exclusive. Like, you didn't get that exclusively. There's no way he introduced a bill just to Breitbart. And in fact, if he introduced a bill just to Breitbart, then it's not a bill in Congress. Senator Tom Cotton introduces a Breitbart bill for Breitbart. That's not the exclusive bill just for them. That's not a bill. That's not how a bill works. Senator Tom Cotton unveils a bill to curb pro-Hamas riots in the U.S. Would anyone watching right now like to explain to me how that's propaganda? Just that sentence, just the title. First of all, it's not riots, is it? Please point to all the Hamas riots across the United States. I'm waiting. Oh, there are no pro-Hamas riots across the United States. There might be protests for Gazans, but that's the other part of the propaganda, calling it pro-Hamas. Oh, really? Being against genocide is pro-Hamas now. Is that right? Anytime you don't want to bomb children, tens of thousands of children, you're pro-Hamas? See, if you're saying that, like Breitbart is, then apparently you're saying Hamas is a very moral entity. Because if not bombing children is pro-Hamas, then man, Hamas is starting to sound better every day, aren't they? It's so idiotic. This type of propaganda is so idiotic. But I brought you that article because I wanted to actually highlight the bill and not just highlight how terrible Breitbart is. I think you all know that. But Senator Tom Cotton unveiled a bill on Wednesday. Tom Cotton unveiled a bill on Wednesday to curb pro-Hamas riots in the United States, fueled by leftist groups. Oh, I can't even read this. Anyway, the point was not, wow, that's, jeez. Feel like I just, sprayed myself with mace or something. Just like, oh, my eyes. Jeez. And I got news for Breitbart. No, it's not fueled by leftist groups. Yes, leftist groups are involved because leftist groups are, wait for it, anti-war, anti-bombing children. So yes, leftists are at these pro-Palestine, pro-Gaza rallies, anti-genocide rallies. Even Jews like myself are there. I wonder why there are so many anti-Zionist Jews who don't want to see children be bombed. I wonder why that is. Can't figure it out, why there could be Jews in the world who don't want to see children be bombed. Anyway, so Tom Cotton has put forward this garbage bill to stop protests. And I thought the right wing was the whole, they're taking away our freedom of speech. Wasn't that the right wing that was like, they're trying to stop us from having our freedom to protest and have speech and things. Meanwhile, you have perhaps one of the most right-wing Congress people, senators, putting forward a bill to stop people from marching through the streets, saying that Israel needs to stop bombing everybody. Anyway, such a garbage human being, just absolute garbage human being. Speaking of garbage human beings, I am going to start. Let's get in to debunking Jordan Peterson's absolute dumpster fire. Most of you know Jordan Peterson, hugely popular, hugely millions and millions of YouTube subscribers and etc. And I think the reason he's so popular is because in terms of outwardly racist sentiment, I don't mean systemic racism, which, Joe Biden is one of the most racist people in the world. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about outwardly like justifying racism, misogyny, all this stuff. Very few people like, since those are such barbaric thought processes to end up in that place, to like outwardly racist, not systemic racism, which is more complicated. There are many people who are very kind-hearted and want to see everyone doing well and everything, who are systemically racist in what they believe and they don't know it. That exists hugely. But in terms of outwardly racist talking points and things like that, you don't really get a lot of smarties. There's not a lot of professors putting forward those kind of ideas. So I think that's part of the reason Jordan Peterson is such a unicorn. People are like, wow, he's putting forward the racist ideas that I like, the misogynist ideas that I like, and he sounds really smart while he's doing it. It's like a unicorn. It's so rare. Anyway, let's dive in here. And by the way, in a few minutes, this live stream will just be at rumble.com/Lee Camp, as well as my locals page. Here he is.
Self in some arguably serious online trouble this week, nonetheless.
I love how Mr. You should never be a victim. There are no victims in this world starts out by saying he's a victim. I got in a lot of trouble this week. I'm the victim.
Although I realize I'm far from alone in this, because I indicated my desire that the authorities in Israel give the terrorists who invaded their land and tortured and killed their citizens the hell that they most truly deserve.
Okay, let's just stop and analyze that one sentence. I mean, don't worry, I'll get into far more than that. But just in that one sentence, let's think about how he's phrased this. He's already phrased the situation in a completely reductive, incorrect, and manipulative manner, right? That's basically what he does. He pretends that this started on... this is just step one of the manipulation of that sentence. He pretends that that this all started on October 7th, right? He said the terrorists of October 7th need to get the hell they deserve. Anyone with half a brain knows this didn't start on October 7th. Now, you may even agree with what Israel's doing. You may even agree, yeah, Israel should just bomb all of Gaza, turn it into a parking lot, kill millions of civilians. You may even agree with that. You still kind of got to acknowledge this didn't start October 7th, right? Millions of Gazans were living in an open-air prison for decades, and it keeps getting worse. Israel doesn't allow anything in. These people they allow things in, but it's all decided by Israel. I'm talking pre-October 7th. Now they're not allowing anything in, so they're starving people to death, children to death, babies to death. But before October 7th, Israel decided what amounts of water got in, which meant most people were drinking dirty water, which is the number one killer of humans on the planet. They were deciding how much food got in, which they notoriously said they were putting Gazans on a diet in order to not give them enough calories to really survive. They decided whether medicines get in, which meant that many people were dying of preventable diseases because the necessary medicines were not there. So he acts like it all started October 7th. It did not. And then he says, they should give the terrorists who did this the hell they deserve. Well, how do you define terrorists, Jordy? Huh? How do you define terrorists? Are terrorists just the Hamas militants, or is it also Israel, the IDF, as they bomb children in the tens of thousands? Is it Israel as they shoot innocent people on the Great March of Return a few years ago? For those who don't recall that, you had thousands of Gazans walk towards the border wall, the border fence, and many were shot. Israel shot thousands. They killed, I think, 100 some, maybe nearing 200 people. These are people without weapons. These are children. These are medics. These are elderly. That is who Israeli snipers were killing. And so are those are terrorists, right? Because they're just killing innocent people. This is pre-October 7th. Pre-October 7th. So he'll happily call Hamas militants terrorists, but he doesn't even mention that Israel was involved in all of this terrorism even pre-October 7th. So what's that reason? So that was two reasons already that one sentence is manipulative, is incorrect, is reductive. Reason number 3, does he ever refer to the IDF as terrorists? Oh, I already did that one. Of course not. Reason number 4, he claims he was or is only calling for Israel to go after the terrorists that harm them, right? He said, give those terrorists the hell they deserve. But anyone with half a brain, anyone willing to be even remotely honest with themselves and with the world knows Israel's not just going after Hamas militants. Israel is bombing everyone. They have killed 39,000 if you count the people lost in the rubble. 70% of those are women and children who are absolutely not Hamas militants. That's if you're assuming every man of military age is a Hamas militant, which they're not. Many are doctors, many are academics, many are journalists. So 70% would be the low level of people that they've killed that are not militants. The lowest level. In average modern warfare, 4 to 8% of those killed are children. In Gaza right now, it's 43 or 45% are children, because Israel is not acting in the way of modern warfare. They're acting in the way of a genocidal maniacs, which is what they are. They're not just going after militants. So when he says they should give the terrorists the hell they deserve, he's lying by omission that Israel's going after just the terrorists. They're not. They're not just going after militants. They're going after everyone. Now, your average listener of most maybe, don't notice these things. In one sentence, all of those lies, all of that manipulation, all of that mistruth wrapped into one sentence in his video. But of course, that's what he does. That's how he operates as a manipulative con man. But let's continue. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt that he misspoke 7,900 times in his first sentence, and let's keep going.
How could I say such a thing while simultaneously maintaining my desire for a rapprochement between the peoples of the Abrahamic tradition? Let us begin that discussion by rendering unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and unto God what is God's. The attack on Israel last week by the monsters of Hamas occurred, as far as I am concerned, not because Muslims and Jews must, by religious necessity, be at each other's throats, but because Iran, a country run by thugs and deemed so even by its own people, has become very concerned that the rulers of Saudi Arabia will continue in their laudable attempts to formulate a productive peace with Israel.
Okay. He's decided to blame this whole situation on Iran, which Iran likely had nothing to do with October 7th. But even if Iran was supporting Hamas in their efforts to fight against their oppression, Now, that doesn't mean I support everything that Hamas militants do. I'm anti-war, so I don't support killing and you know, in order to I don't know, make your point. But even if Iran were somehow connected to Hamas, that still doesn't mean this is all just Iran. Let's take this entire situation of an apartheid state, an oppressive apartheid state, who is harming and abusing and imprisoning millions. And let's say, oh no, it's Iran. Iran, that's the real problem there. And then he says, Iran's own people say Iran is run by thugs. Now, for some of them, that is true. Well, guess what? The same's true in the United States. I ask you folks who are watching, how many of you think that the United States is run by thugs? But he acts like, Jordan Peterson acts like, oh no, it's just Iran is dirty. And so just they are run by thugs. No, it's interesting. Most countries have people that live in them that think that their rulers are run by, that the country's run by thugs. Most countries. Except for Bhutan, where they have gross domestic happiness and everyone is happy there. No, I'm kidding. Even in Bhutan, I bet there's a guy who's like, I think it's thugs. By the way, that was a perfect Bhutanese accent. But anyway, he acts like Iran run by thugs. The U.S. empire is more run by thugs, is more criminal, kills more people. Let me ask you this. How many people has Iran killed around the world over the past year compared to how many people the U.S. has killed around the world over the past year? The U.S. are the thugs. We are the thugs. We are the criminals. We are the murderers. And yet he's like, this was all caused by Iran. Yeah, they doing their thing, they were harming people. It's unbelievable. But even if you were to, I always like to analyze something if you were to also take the premise that the guy's right in that sentence. Like, let's also say, okay, let's say he was right. Let's say Iran secretly funded and armed and snuck all their people into Gaza in order to do the perpetrate October 7th, and it was all Iran. Let's even pretend it was Iran fighters. It was absolutely the Iranians that snuck into Gaza and then broke out of Gaza and then committed all of October 7th. Even if that were the case, guess what? Still can't commit genocide. It wouldn't matter in terms of the genocide accusations against Israel right now. They would still be true. It would still all be accurate. But of course, he doesn't care about that because he's defending Israel, because he's defending the white Western view of the world. He's defending the Western view of we should be able to extract everything from the world, and we should be able to oppress and keep down anybody who's not mainly in the white Western world connections. Now, of course, when you say Western, it's a little confusing because, you know, Israel and everything, but Israel is a vassal state to the United States, or a client state, as many phrase it, as is Europe. And so these are all Western states in that regard. And his job as a right-wing white American, or is he Canadian, male, is to defend the white Western view of the world. And it's funny because, you know, a lot of what he does is kind of pretending we, the white men of the world, are the victims. We're so oppressed and everything. Meanwhile, the white Western countries of the world own the world, like have hegemony largely. We are now in the past 5 years seeing a slight push against that, and hegemony is the U.S. hegemony is being at least receding to some degree, but it is not that much. The U.S. hegemony still largely exists, and here you have a white Western male going, what are we gonna do? We're losing the world. Okay, let's keep going here. I actually, without playing it, because it takes 5 minutes to play the next segment, I just want to say he goes on to give a lengthy explanation of Arab countries recognizing Israel. Some Arab countries have, started making movements towards recognizing Israel or making deals in that way. And he doesn't mention for a second the day-to-day life of a person in Gaza, living in an open-air prison before October 7th. I already detailed a lot of that, but at no point does he even acknowledge that the people of Gaza have it rough, maybe? Like, even if he were to lighten it and be like, it's not that easy to live in Gaza. I don't expect him to use the term open air prison, but could we have some acknowledgement of what exactly the world is that we're talking about here? But of course not, because he's so morally bankrupt that it's just, how do I go after the Arab world, Muslims, Iran, and how do I defend the white Western world? And that's the end of the analysis in his brain there, which is stunted, I guess, in some ways. Here's the thing: is I don't deny he's very smart. He's a very smart but morally bankrupt person, which can happen. It can happen. Okay. Let me jump to another part here, because it is a 20-minute video, which if I analyzed, as you saw, I spent 5 minutes on one sentence. So if I analyze the whole thing, we'd be here till checks watch 2027.
Remember the Saudi unwillingness to provide the U.S. with additional oil when Biden asked? Remember their recent flirtation with China? The Saudi leaders have been strongly considering the continuation and extension of the Abrahamic peace process. In consequence. So he just glances off these things about. So remember when Saudi Arabia, what's wrong with Saudi? Like, oh, good thing they were starting to recognize Israel, but bad thing, they remember when they held back oil from the United States? And he gives no acknowledgement. Perhaps he doesn't understand it. It is possible that the Saudi Arabia has basically had a deal with the United States to make petrodollars the ruling currency of the world, to sell and buy oil in dollars. But now the U.S. has become so genocidal, and the U.S. is losing some of our power around the globe, which is a good thing. And so Saudi Arabia is starting in some ways to open up to selling oil in other currencies, selling oil to China in Chinese currencies. So those things, of course, are very threatening to the United States. So why is it a big deal that Saudi Arabia is doing that? Well, it threatens the entirety of the petrodollar. The petrodollar deal was made in the 70s it was the idea of Kissinger, supposedly. And basically, it was once the U.S. got off the gold standard, what would keep U.S. currency as the strongest currency in the world? Well, if you're buying and selling oil around the world in U.S. dollars, that makes the U.S. dollar the most powerful currency, which then makes it the reserve currency of the world, which then makes it, again, the most powerful currency, which also means the United States can print as much money as we want, which allows us to then spend $1 trillion a year on military. If you can't comprehend what $1 trillion a year is, just know that if you make $40,000 a year after taxes, it would take you roughly 25 million years to make $1 trillion. So get to work. If you want to make $1 trillion, just 25 million years. So it's all insane. It's all insane. But he doesn't seem to understand that that's why the Saudi Arabia is so pivotal to the U.S. And that's why it's so upsetting to us that Saudi Arabia could withhold oil, could sell oil in other currencies. And he just kind of glances off it as if it's just Saudi Arabia being surly, which is a little bit more than that. Okay, let's keep going. Oh, okay. So for this next part, this next part's going to get me in a little trouble, but
I don't doubt it. But anyway, all the rest of this is going to be for members. Since we're at the top of the hour, it's going to be for members at leecamp.net. That's my locals page. If you're watching on Rumble, you just click the red Join Lee tab. And when you get to the next page, scroll down and become a subscriber. It's 38 cents an episode. So that's $6 a month to watch all these, to get all the extra segments. I hope you will join me over there. I've got a bunch more to break apart this video by Jordan Peterson. But yeah, support the show. Join up over there. And you'll get to watch this entire segment, but you also get my book, my ebook, Dangerous Ideas. You'll get Q&As. You'll be part of the community. It's a whole thing. It's a whole thing for $6 a month, 38 cents an episode. So join up at leecamp.net. We'll take you there. The other way to get there, if you're watching on Rumble, is to click the red Join Lee tab. And then last thing I'll say before I keep going is I do these live streams 4 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. You can watch them anytime afterwards. You just won't catch them live, but you're probably not going to get the alerts even if you hit subscribe. Please do hit subscribe, but you probably won't get the alerts. So just show up Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern. I'll see you there, noon Pacific. All right, let's do it. Coming over to locals to finish this up and get in some trouble.